to another great episode of the Bourbon Road with your hosts, Jim and Brian, where they talk bourbon and, of course, drink bourbon. Grab yourself a pour, kick back, and enjoy another trip down the Bourbon Road.
We are excited to have our sponsor, Seldom Seen Farms, with their bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup. Kevin and his staff there do a wonderful job. We're excited to have them sign on again this year to support the Bourbon Road, and we love their product. We hope our listeners will visit seldomseenmaple.com and check out all they have to offer. A lot of great gifts there. Bourbon-aged maple syrup, bourbon barrel-aged coffee, Rickhouse Reserve barbecue sauce. And you can buy it by the bottle. You can buy it by the case. You can even get bourbon maple candle. And they even have maple cotton candy. Definitely check out seldomseenmaple.com. Support our sponsors. Support Kevin and his family there. They have a 5,000 maple tap operation in Ohio, and they're doing it right. They don't just produce maple syrup. They're also bourbon enthusiasts, and we love them to death. Again, go check out seldomseenmaple.com. Kevin and the staff will take care of you. Well, hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Road. We're once again in the Bourbon Road Bar. Got our co-host with us, Brian. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Jim. Happy to be back.
Yeah, it's always good to sit down here and grab a few bourbons. We've got 4 of them lined up tonight. We've got a special guest in who has been on the Bourbon Road once before. I think you've even been on a live event once on Facebook or something, maybe.
I think
you did a little bit of a gobble box riff on a Facebook live event or something at one time.
I think I did. Yes, I did.
And but you're back again. And just to introduce you, we've got Bo Garrett in the house. Tell us a little bit about what you do today, Bo.
The actual title that I have is called Executive Brand Builder at Wild Turkey Distillery. Brand builder could mean anything from leading a VIP tour to wiping down the bar once the day's closed. But I really enjoy it. I was listening to your episode when you had Bruce on, and he couldn't remember the title. He's like, I'm not sure what they call him. He's, I think it was brand champion or something. Next time I see him, I want one of those. I want one of those WWE belts, Bruce. It said brand champion.
There you go.
But yeah, that's what I'm doing now. I'll be running the bar one day. Matter of fact, I saw you recently when I was running the bar. But I'll take care of VIP events. Lead tastings, lead tours, whether it's a VIP tour or your standard tour.
Now, how long have you been at Wild Turkey?
I think 5 years. Obviously been around the business a lot longer than that, but about 5 years that I've actually been employed by Wild Turkey.
Well, we're going to get straight to the whiskey here. And like I said, we've got 4 Wild Turkey products we're going to drink through tonight. We've got some good ones. We've had some ones that have been on the show before, but we're going to drink through them with you. And you helped us choose these before the show. So
I don't think there's any bad choices.
Well, there's never a bad choice with Wild Turkey.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
I don't think I've ever had something from Wild Turkey that I was unhappy with. Now, there are some that are better than others, but never had one that I was disappointed in. And I've been drinking Wild Turkey since 1981.
I've had some that blew me away.
Yeah.
Like, holy cow, didn't see that coming. That's great. Yeah.
Well, this is our warm up tonight. So, and I think our listeners might know what's coming down the pike, but I warm up with this bourbon on a regular basis, and it doesn't matter what I'm having on the show. I always like to go into a show already having had a pour, primarily because if I don't, I get that first bitter note of the day from whatever I'm drinking, and I don't think that's fair to the bottle I'm reviewing. So it's always nice to have that warm-up bourbon. What do you warm up with, Brian?
Well, a lot of times I will warm up with the JTS Brown.
Yeah.
We all know I like that one quite a bit, so that's usually a good one to go to. But I do agree, this this is a nice warm up.
This is definitely a nice warm up. And what about you, Bo? Do you warm up at all, or you just go straight forward?
I do like my 101.
Yeah,
it's just a good all around bourbon.
it is. It absolutely is. Well, cheers, fellas. Let's warm up.
Cheers.
Wow, it's always good. It's always got that nice spice to wake up the palate, and it's not too strong, not too hot. It won't overpower whatever you're going to have next, but it's not wimpy either. It's got a little bit of a bite to it.
Oh, so good every time.
I think it's probably for me the most versatile bourbon out there.
Yeah, I said it's in just my opinion, of course, but I think it might be the most underestimated bourbon that there is.
Yeah,
because people have applied some kind of stigma to 101, like, oh, I was college. I had, and I've started telling people, man, because I'm flying the 101 flag every day. I want people to realize, no, you're missing out.
Yeah.
When people start talking about their college days in 101, I'm always like, 101 wasn't the problem. I think you were.
Before the show started, I was telling you we had a wild turkey tasting about a month ago. We had, I don't know, there's probably 100 plus people there taking the tasting, and a few of them were from Wild Turkey. They work at the distillery there, and of course they didn't announce themselves until afterwards. But
right.
But our tasting was called "Why Not Wild Turkey," and the reason we did that was because it still has that stigma, like you said. Like a lot of people think, oh, wait a minute, isn't that college whiskey? Isn't that biker whiskey? Isn't that bad boy whiskey?
Yeah.
And everybody, from the 80s and the 90s we have those memories of those nights that we probably shouldn't have been part of.
Oh yeah. Everybody that you talk to when when I lead a tasting and 101's part of it, I'll hold the bottle up. And before I say anything, I can look at that crowd and you'll see at least 2 or 3 people. They get that look on their face. And I'm like, I know who made some bad life choices right there. Because you're not going to win a fight with it if you try to fight with it, but that's not what you're supposed to do with it to begin with.
That's absolutely correct. So it fared very well that night. All the Wild Turkey expressions we had fared very well that night, and we took votes at the end. Which one did you like the best? And that's a matter of preference, right?
Absolutely.
And I will say that Wild Turkey 101 got its fair share of votes. So. And that's because it sits right in that saddle around 100 proof. It's not too hot. It's not too weak. It's kind of right there in the right spot.
I agree.
So, Bo, what was the reason 101 is at 101? Why did it end up at 101 proof?
Well, what I was told by Jimmy Russell is, I get questions all the time, where did the name come from? That was, as I think everybody's pretty well aware at this point, it was actually a wild turkey hunting trip. And the way it was explained to me was that there was a gentleman who was working for Austin Nichols. They were going on a hunting trip in the Carolinas. And even Jimmy said, I don't know which one of the Carolinas it was, but I know they were in the Carolinas. And he just pulled some stuff out of a barrel. And the way Jimmy explained it to me, he was pulling it out of an 8-year-old barrel that happened to be 101 proof. And that's how that name came about. People asking him. And I totally believe this part because being here in Kentucky, my whole life, it's been that thing. If you don't have a name for something and you brought something that I love, the next time I saw you, I'd be like, hey, you got any more of that wild turkey stuff with you? Because that's what we were doing when we had it. And I think that's probably very true about how the name came about. But yeah, supposedly it was a 8-year-old barrel that just happened to be 101 proof when they pulled it out of the barrel.
And I think I had heard something along those lines. Now, you hear a lot of fables in the whiskey world. But I had always heard that 101 kind of was at one time kind of the barrel proof. That's kind of what it came out of the barrel at. And
I could see that because they were going in typically at 107.
Yeah. And it tends to lose a little bit of proof. Depending on the floors, right?
Yeah, where it's at. Mm-hmm.
So if it's up on the higher levels,
you're going up
in proof, and it's down in the basement, not the basement, but the ground floor.
Right.
It's going to go down in proof.
Right. It's like if you see say a Booker's that's 128 proof, you can't legally go into the barrel at 128 proof and be bourbon.
Right.
So you're looking at something that, some people say ages faster or whatever, but your evaporation's mainly water and it happens up top.
Yes. Yeah. How hot does it get up in the top of you've been up in the top of the brick houses in the summertime?
I have, and it's horrible. I don't know the exact temperature. I want to say Jimmy told me one time that he measured the temp and it was well over 120 up top.
Now, are there fellas or gals? Are there workers at Wild Turkey that have to go up there in the heat and work on those barrels if they're need a little tending?
6 or 7 people, I think it is 6 or 7, maybe even 8 on a barrel team when they go into those warehouses.
Yeah, and their job is to inspect the barrels and see which ones need a little bit.
Well, those people generally go in just taking them in and putting them out.
Okay.
That kind of thing. That's usually what those people are doing.
So they're not, if you got one that's leaking, it's just going to leak. Is that the way it goes, or
it shouldn't? It should get reported.
It should get reported.
I've seen barrels in there before. Like, I don't think anybody's told them about this one yet. And they go back and Eddie just shake his head like, they're supposed to tell us that.
I think I'd always heard that, barrels require a little bit of maintenance over their lifetime.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they can spring a leak and you need to do something with them. Now, I don't know what that something is, but
I know that in Kentucky Cooperage was kind enough to bring us over and let us see them do the entire process of building barrels. And it was kind of cool to me to see toward the end there, they check them to see if they're leaking or whatever and have you. And the guy was like, do you know if we got a leak between the staves, what we do? He said, cattails. Because it has to be organic. You can't use anything. You can't use glue or any kind of sealant. And he said, a male cattail, that they'll slide it in there, and when it gets wet, it'll expand and close that gap between those two staves.
Now, is it like the stalk of the cattail?
That's the blade.
The blade. Oh,
I didn't know which one was male and female. Didn't even know there was a male and female cattail. He said it's the one with a corn dog on it.
Got it. Yeah, and that's what I think about when I think of a cattail, is that corn dog up on the end.
I didn't know there was 2 different ones. That's the only thing I knew was the one that had the corn dog on the end. But evidently there's another one too.
I swear, I learned something new every single show. Did you know that, Brian?
I did not. That is so cool.
Wow.
It was bizarre. But yeah, they would seal up leaks like that because it makes sense because you can't do anything organic. I would imagine now if you got a leak in the middle of the stave, they've obviously got those little, looks like golf tees.
Yeah.
You could put a little hole and seal that back up.
Yeah. Well, that's something else. So I was down at Wild Turkey the other day, and like you mentioned when we first got on air here, going through the gift shop, and the gift shop's not currently at its main location.
It is not.
You're at the temporary location, which used to be the old gift shop, right?
Yeah, it was the original first visitor center that Wild Turkey ever had. If anybody's listening, it came to that little yellow house back in the day and saw Jimmy sitting over in that living room on the couch, that's where we're back at now. He told me it opened in 1988 as Wild Turkey's visitor center back then. Originally built for the train master was what it was for. So the house is one of the oldest houses in Lawrenceburg.
Yeah, it still looks great. Looks great. They've done a little bit of work on it.
Yeah, there was a little bit of work got done to it before we moved into it. So yeah.
Well, it's nice to see you there. It was kind of a surprise. I came around the corner to the bar, and you were pouring some great drinks. Not only pours of bourbon, but you're also making some cocktails there. Yeah,
doing a little bit of everything back there, man. So
I did get my leather Wild Turkey hat while I was there, Brian. I've been wanting one of those.
And it worked. You wore it well.
Yeah.
You did. It worked. When you, one of my favorite Jimmy stories, when you saw me back there at that bar, I don't know if you noticed, but behind me, there's a doorway pass through going into the kitchen.
Okay.
Jimmy, when he visits, loves to give me a hard time. If I see Jimmy 99% of the time, as soon as he lays eyes on me, the first thing he does is look at me and go, well, who woke you up? And I was working the bar back there one day, and I saw the people across the bar looking at me, talking to me about what drink they were going to get, started to laugh. I'm like, what in the world are they laughing about? This is serious business. And I felt something hit me in the back of the head, and I turned around and looked in the kitchen, and Jimmy was in the kitchen with that cane poking me in the back of the head from the back of the kitchen.
He's got that sense of humor, doesn't he?
I love him.
Yeah. So how often does he get down to the gift shop there? Or you call that the visitor center, I should say.
Yeah, because that's all we have right now is as a visitor center. So, because we still like to, I love to be in there and like talk with people, and I still tell the stories and that kind of thing with them. So I love that part of it. So yeah, I still call it that.
Yeah.
But hopefully we're hoping to get back up as soon as possible into that big one.
So what kind of renovation are they doing up there? Just a once over on it, or are they completely redoing it?
No, it's going to look very much the same when you pull up to it on the outside.
Yeah.
It did have to have a new roof put on because we had some tornadoes that went through Louisville back last summer. And my manager went in and she said she found the corner of the roof laying over in the yard. So that had to be done.
Yeah.
But now the inside is going to get a redesign, a reimagine, if you would.
I didn't know that. The tornado that came through and lifted the roof off my barn went down to Wild Turkey and did a little damage. How about that?
We just got the straight line stuff, but still, it was strong enough to take the corner of the roof off.
Yeah, I don't think we actually got the tornado here. But my barn roof actually lifted off. It pulled every nail out of my roof, lifted the roof up in the air, and then set it back down on top of the barn.
Well, I guess that helped a little.
Well, it was nice that I still had a barn. I had a roof on my barn, but they had to take it all off and put a new one on. So
yeah, this was a perfect square.
Yeah,
that it took off over there, and she said it just laid it over in the yard. When people come back to visit, though, that big glass end of the building will still be there.
Yeah,
and hopefully that part of the building will be utilized in an even better way for guests because they love that view of the river, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really something there up on the. It's not cliffs, but it's just an overlook on the river there.
Mm-hmm.
Something.
It's not
else.
a bad way to come to work every morning and see that sun coming up over the river, that behind that bridge.
Yeah,
that's a pretty cool view every morning getting in there.
Now, do you live on this side of the river, on the Turkey side of the river?
I live on the Turkey side. Yeah,
you live in Lawrenceburg.
I do.
Yeah,
takes me about 8 minutes with traffic to get to work.
Oh, tell me about that
traffic in Lawrenceburg. So, 8 minutes. I said something one day. The manager, she lives closer than I do, and somebody said, "How far do you live?" I said, "I can get here in about 6 minutes." She goes, 6 minutes? She said, "How do you get here in 6 minutes?" I'm like, "We're not talking about how. I just said I can get here in 6 minutes."
All right. Well, let's check out what we got in our next glass. Mm-hmm. And you actually picked it out, right, Bo?
I did.
Picked it right off my shelf. I think your eye went straight to it. You did say that you haven't really had an opportunity to spend any time with this one, right?
No, this is actually the first time I've had a chance to try it.
All right. Well, this is the Wild Turkey Diamond, and this was a tribute to Jimmy Russell for his 60th anniversary at Wild Turkey as master distiller. I don't know what he's at now.
68.
68 years. So this
in the
was
business.
So if we want to date this bottle, it's about 8 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, 60 years at Wild Turkey, not as master distiller.
Right. He became master distiller in 67.
Okay, so we're coming up on, that would be 40, 50s. It will be 60 years as a master distiller in 2027. Mm-hmm.
And the way he's going, he'll be there.
He'll be there. Just come on down on a Saturday and say, "Hey, Jimmy."
Now, a lot of people don't realize that when he became the master distiller over there, it was JTS Brown at that point.
It was a different distillery.
It sure was.
Yeah.
Because he got there in 54, and in 54, that was Anderson County Distilling. And then he was only there for a year, and it became JTS Brown, which is why when you hear people say the McBrayer rick houses over across from Four Roses, those little rick houses that belong to us.
Right.
When you hear people say the McBrayer rick houses, a lot of people think that is in relation to Judge McBrayer. It had nothing to do with his distillery. That location was referred to as McBrayer.
Yeah.
That was JTS Brown rick houses.
So how many different rick house locations does Wild Turkey have?
3. Well, I mean, if I count the Tyrone as one big footprint.
So that's the main distillery site.
Yeah. That's both sides of the road. Over by the distillery and on the other side of the road, I count all of that as one. Then you've got over across from Four Roses is what was JTS Brown there. And then, of course, the legendary Camp Nelson rick houses.
Camp Nelson down in
Nicholasville.
That's Nicholasville, right?
Close to Garrett County, heading out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right across from the cemetery there.
Is that right after you cross over the Kentucky River again? It's like right there?
It's right before.
Right before.
Yeah, if you're going toward the water from there, you're right before, because those rick houses belong to, believe it or not, Canada Dry Distilling Company.
Oh, really?
The old Curly distillery used to sit down there, where the bridge crosses the Kentucky River. Uh-huh. The old E.J. Curly one was down there right on the river. But Canada Dry was making Kentucky bourbon.
E.J. Curly has been resurrected.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, guys, I'm ready to. I haven't had the diamond in probably more than a year, and I'm ready to try it again. So this is a 91 proof, and for me, it's kind of really gentle on the nose.
It is
nice and soft.
Still tell it's turkey though.
Oh yeah, it's definitely turkey.
I can tell. Just yeah.
So a fine tribute to Jimmy on his 60th anniversary. And there's still, I mean, I think I bought this bottle 2 or 3 years ago on the shelf. So you can still find this kind of stuff in the wild if you got your eyes open.
That's good. Punches above its weight just a little bit.
It does.
Yeah, nice spice on that. I like that.
Yeah, it does have a little bit more of a sort of a back end bite to it, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of soft up front, though, a little bit. Wow.
Yeah. I was going to say that a little soft on the front, but
finish hangs around for a second.
Finish is good.
Yeah,
very good.
I should have done my research. I didn't really have the time to research this bottle and get back up to date on it from the time you picked it off the shelf until we drank it. But I would imagine that it's got some 8 to 12-year-old whiskey in it because that's what Jimmy loves.
That's
right?
his window. Yeah, he'll say that he thinks 8 to 12 is about the right spot.
Yeah,
whereas a lot of people would say, "Well, have you had some of the stuff coming out of there recently?"
Well, I like this 17-year bottle and bond.
Well, I was just saying 13 is not a bad number either when it comes to wild turkey products.
I think 13 is a real good number.
Yeah.
So where do the 3 pallets sit? I'm talking about Jimmy, Eddie, and Bruce. Where do their pallets sit individually?
Jimmy is big on consistency, and he wants it to be consistent from bottle to bottle to bottle. That's his thing. He'll talk about it being clean, basically meaning what we love about non-chill filtration is what he doesn't love about non-chill filtration. He wants a nice, clean finish, likes the sweetness. I think Eddie prefers it a little spicier.
Yeah.
And, I know Eddie's the son, but he's got a true love of the old school way of doing it. Like if it was up to Eddie, I think it would all be non-chill filtered and barrel proof, and like that's the way it was made.
So the Russell's single barrel is more Eddie's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like even if you have a Russell single barrel beside of Rare Breed's Jimmy's baby, right? You'll notice the viscosity is different. And that Russell's, even though the Rare Breed's at 116, some of those Russells, man, they're like, here I am. Eddie likes that.
Yeah.
Bruce is a rye person. He loves his rye whiskey.
He does. He does. Well, like you said, he was on the show not too long ago, and we drank through some rye. So
Eddie gives Bruce credit for kind of pulling him into doing more rye stuff and getting more into rye whiskeys.
And there's been some tasty ones that have come out, and we've got one for the show today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it'll probably be the last one we drink towards the end. I don't remember the proof on it, but it's going to be
104.
Was it 104?
Yeah.
You sold me that bottle.
And I'm telling you, it's one of those, if you can just get people, and don't get me wrong. Now, I'm not like the biggest rye whiskey fan in the world. I would be more likely to lean Jimmy's direction, or what have you with that kind of thing. But when I tried that one the first time, I was like, holy smoke, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there one rye that sticks out to you more than others? Is that the one that kind of takes first place from turkey products? Yeah.
I think so. I think it is. When I think about all the other products. Now, don't get me wrong, like you and I were talking before the show, as far as a good versatile rye whiskey, it's hard to beat 101 rye.
Yeah. What about the Cornerstone?
I loved it.
Yeah.
That one was powerful to me. That one lets you know you were drinking rye whiskey when you touched that one. I told Eddie one day, I said, I loved it. I said, love the taste of it, but I was ready to quit tasting it before it was ready for me to. I had a finish for days on that thing.
Yeah. Well, we're sipping on this diamond. I'd like to start chit-chatting a little bit about your life before turkey. And, you just happened to play for Montgomery Gentry for a while. You were the guitarist there, lead guitarist, right?
Right.
How many years did you do that?
We were on the road as MG for, I think, 20, 21 years, something like that. As far as having played music with Eddie and Troy, well before that, back in the bars in Lexington. So that was, oh, good grief. That was, well, I met Troy right after I moved to Lexington, and he and I started hanging out and became buddies right after I got down to Lexington, which is like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So maybe more than that now at this point in time. I keep forgetting how old I am.
You guys were playing bars in Lexington and 30 years ago, so that would have been early 90s?
Mm-hmm.
Early
Absolutely.
90s?
Yep.
Okay.
Because 99 was when the first single came out.
Yeah.
That was Hillbilly Shoes, of course.
Yeah.
That was the first one.
Maybe we get you to play a little bit of that.
I don't know if I can do it on that thing or not.
No, that's got a riff in it that I think you need your electric for.
You know what's funny is that riff, when that came to us as a demo, that was a bluegrass song.
Yeah.
So that riff was on a banjo.
I can see that. Yeah.
It was on a banjo, and they were like, can you play that? I was like, not like that. I can play a guitar riff to it, but I can't do that.
Well, darn, we probably should have had you bring your electric with you too, but that's all right. Next time, we'll have you on again.
I'm kind of interested to know, what were some of the bars that you played in Lexington?
Oh, wow. Be easier to say which ones we didn't. The Congress was the one that we called the Dungeon. It was one of those bars, like if you didn't have a knife when you came in, they give you one. So we played there. New Circle M was one that I played. I feel like Eddie said that he played that before I got there. Austin City's the obvious. Mm-hmm. Gosh, there was 2 or 3 more over there. Continental Inn played there. Just a bunch of them. All of them felt like. Yeah.
So what was your music life like before you met Troy? Or you guys were hanging out for a while, but
yeah. Before I moved to Lexington, I'd been playing in a country band for a little while, but during the 80s era there, I was in a heavy metal hair band.
You were?
Yeah. I had all kinds of hair. Wore the spandex and nothing that we're proud of, but things happen.
You're wearing a hat now, so we can't tell.
Yeah, there's nothing left. It's gone. Had all this long black hair.
Yeah.
I played in a heavy metal hair band for a while when that was the big thing.
Well, all of those things contribute to the end result, right? They're all part of your life. They're all part of your journey. And I'm sure you gained some knowledge and experience and whatnot playing in that hair band.
Yeah, I think being in a rock band helped when Eddie and Troy decided to do the Montgomery Gentry thing. And, I was lucky enough to be tagged along with them there. They both grew up with rock too. So being in a rock band helped for the live performances as far as Montgomery Gentry, because it was not if you've ever seen MG live, it wasn't to just stand there in one spot and sing to you kind of show. That's not what MG was about.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you a single guy back then? Single fella?
When I met them guys?
Yeah. So I guess is
I was again after I met them too.
I was going to say, it's probably a good thing to hang out with Troy, wasn't it? I mean, the girls were probably around.
Well, yeah, you can say good. There's plenty of girls around, but if Troy's in the room, they're not looking at you. He said, "Hey, that's one of the best looking men I've ever seen."
Well, I don't know. I think it's like we always say, rising tide raises all ships. I think if you're Troy Gentry, it ups your odds a little bit.
Oh, yeah, there's that too. Yeah. I said that Troy was like, he was talented, but it didn't hurt to have eye candy there for the girls because with Eddie, the guys loved Eddie. Let me tell you, in that whole, testosterone, that kind of.
He's a brute.
And Southern rockers loved Eddie.
Yeah.
But then we were able to bridge both those gaps because we had Troy there too, who could sing and who looked like that. So then the young ladies wanted to come see Montgomery Gentry because they got to look at Troy Gentry while he was singing.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking at something that was like the total package, having those two guys up front, man, you covered the spectrum.
But they let you step out front every now and then, didn't they?
Oh yeah. They gave me free reign. That was as far as that goes. It's just, if we played together for so long, I knew, okay, my turn.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, you've posted, you've got some great social media accounts and you get back and you post some of them.
Yeah. They pop up occasionally. It's kind of cool.
The great fun pics of your time with the band. And I have to say they bring back some memories and I can tell that you're living the dream right then. You're living
Absolutely.
the dream. Yeah.
And I don't know that we were fully aware of that.
Yeah.
But because it was so much fun that I don't think we took time to take it in, if that makes any sense. We got to play New Year's Eve at Rupp Arena. That was like, for us, that was a dream come true,
Sure.
man. For us, stomping around every bar in Lexington. Now we're going to headline a New Year's Eve show at Rupp Arena. That was awesome. And several years later, my wife and I were at a basketball game over there, and she had gone to get ice cream, and I was just like taking forever, obviously. And she said, I was getting worried. He's going to be like, oh my God, the game's getting to start back. It's after halftime. Where's she at? Why's she been gone so long? But she got stuck in line and happened to be looking at the wall where they were selling the ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a picture of me and Eddie and Troy on the wall at Rupp Arena. And she came back, she said, you're not going to believe this. And then after the game, she walked me out there and I was like, are you kidding me? This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. It's like being in the Hall of Fame for a Kentucky boy to be on the wall.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we all know the ice cream's legendary. So you get in line, you don't get out of line. You got to wait for it.
And that's the thing is when I found out she was there for the ice cream, I was like, oh yeah, okay. I know why you were gone so long now,
Oh, this is some great conversation. I'm out of whiskey. How about you, Brian? No, you're doing all right.
I've got a little bit
Bo,
left.
Man, I feel guilty. I'm on full steam here.
So, Jim, can I ask you what your favorite Montgomery Gentry song was?
Yeah, I've never been a favorites guy. I don't have a favorite band. I don't have a favorite song. I don't have a favorite TV show. I don't have a favorite book. I just kind of consume things. I don't have a favorite football, basketball, or baseball team. It's kind of I'm just one of those guys that have never picked a side.
You just appreciate what's in front of you.
I do.
I might be I'll tell you what mine is.
Yeah.
Long Line of Losers.
Oh my gosh, dude. We had so much fun with that song. Loved it.
I think that is, of course, there's so many that everybody know, they all know real well, but that's the one, that's my go-to.
There was a point in time on stage when we get to the end of it where, because at the end of it was kind of like a guitar solo. So I'd be standing up there beside of them. All three of us, we stand up there and we'd all do the L thing on the forehead until it was pointed out. Oh, big Louisville fans, are you? We're like, oh, we stopped doing that.
Upside down.
Yeah, I got to turn those upside down to do that. No, that was a fun song to play.
Yeah.
I think that we've had such a great first half here. We've had a couple of great pours and we've got two more ahead of us. I'm really looking forward to those. I think that I feel kind of guilty that I've sipped on this so quick and it's gone.
It's good.
You guys are way behind me.
It's really easy to
good.
sip. Yeah.
I am home already, so I guess I can drink a little bit faster.
Yeah, there you go.
Guys.
That's right.
All right, when we come back, a lot more of Bo Garrett and Wild Turkey. We're going to have a great time tonight. Stick with us. Folks, we definitely encourage you to check out seldomseenmaple.com. That's Seldom Seen Farms. Kevin and his staff there are doing a fantastic job. And like we said at the beginning of the show, they've got a 5,000 maple tap operation. They're a first-generation farm with a passion to produce the very best maple products available. They've won so many awards, and they have a very special, unique aging method for their syrup and for the barrel-aged coffee. They provide quality at a very affordable price. They're not a maple factory or a co-packer. Kevin and his staff there are farmers with a passion for maple. Like I said before, Kevin is a bourbon enthusiast. He's not just a paid sponsor. He's a friend of the show. He's a roadie, and he loves helping roadies get down the bourbon road. make sure you check out seldomseenmaple.com. They're constantly producing great bourbon-aged maple syrups using barrels from the very best distilleries. They also return those barrels to the distilleries afterwards. Distilleries like New Riff, Leaper's Fork, Treaty Oak Distilling, the Bard Distillery, Pine Bluffs Distilling, Mystic Farm and Distillery, J. Riger. So many more to come. Kevin and his staff there are just spreading the love, spreading the maple syrup, making it happen. And at the end of the day, those barrels that age that maple syrup get refilled with some wonderful bourbon and make some great maple finished bourbon whiskey. How awesome is that? Definitely check out seldomseenmaple.com. Get you some. Back. We had a nice little break there. We got to finish our diamond. We got to sip on that diamond, and I don't think a drop was wasted, was it, Bo?
Well, I know mine wasn't.
Yeah, Brian.
Not a drop wasted.
That's a nice whiskey. I would say that it's pretty rare to find one of those out in the wild again. I got lucky when I found that one, and if you do run across one, I'd highly suggest you pick it up, as long as you're not paying too much crazy dollars for it. But we had a couple other little tastes during the break there. We've had a few bites of something to eat. We're back now. We're re-energized and ready to go. And we have something new in our glass. We've had this on the show recently. We had this probably about a month and a half ago. We had it on the show, but I think it's appropriate to bring it back now. Bo's here. And we're going to have the Wild Turkey 12-year 101 Export 2023 or 2022. What is it?
22.
22. Yeah. Would be the 22 version. And you've had this. You've got a bottle of it.
Yep. I've got some left in the bottle.
Yeah. It doesn't last long, does it?
Oh, my gosh.
We got a hashtag here. It's called OTDB. I don't know if you saw that or not. OTDB. Got a ball cap up there.
Oh, yeah. I did see that. Yeah.
Open the damn bottle.
Yeah. I love it. Love it.
We figure most distilleries probably agree with us that you should open your damn bottle. But more importantly, they believe you should do what you want with your whiskey, right?
Yeah, sure. I've heard Jimmy tell people to open the bottle and then drink it, and then fill it back up with iced tea if you want to save that bottle.
Yeah.
Tell people, they'll say, I'm never going to open this. When he's signing a bottle, he'll say, why not? I'm writing on the outside of the bottle.
Exactly.
He said, drink it, fill it back up with iced tea.
You need to drink that whiskey because, that's where you get the enjoyment from, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And that story, now and we've talked about this before, but there are reasons to save a bottle. Somebody's going to be 18 and, 10 years, you want to have a bottle ready for them, or 21, I should say. Somebody's going to be 21, you want to have a bottle for them on their 21st, or you got an anniversary you're going to celebrate, or you got a friend that's coming in from overseas and you want to save the bottle for them. Whatever the reason, those are all great reasons.
Right.
But if the reason is you don't want it to be gone, that's probably not a good reason.
What it's just my opinion on this one, but if it's never enjoyed, and I think that's like with those guys, I heard the same thing from Fred No, it's like these guys put a lot of time and effort into this. They want you to drink it. They'd much rather you come back in and say, if Jimmy's sitting in there, you walk in and Jimmy's sitting there and say, I found me a bottle of the Russell's 13. We opened that with the family around the table. That's some of the best bourbon I've ever had. That makes him feel a lot better. It makes him happier.
Yeah.
Than if you walk in there and you say, I found me a bottle of Russell's 13. It's up on my shelf. I ain't opening that. That's really not in his wheelhouse. Same with Eddie. They
Yeah, I've always said that I think that the great thing about bourbon is it gives you an opportunity to share with folks and create stories and memories. And so that's what's really special for me is when I have somebody come over and they have an opportunity to taste something that they wouldn't normally have, or, they just see something cool and they're like, hey, can I have that? You have some cool stories that come out and you get to share. Most people would taste things that they would probably never taste otherwise. And it opens their eyes up.
I don't think I've ever had the joy in opening a bottle here at the house and drinking it by myself that I've had with opening it and sharing it with somebody else. It's just, there's a whole new level, right? You get to see the look on their face. They get to try that, because we get some nice bottles every now and then. And, you know, not everybody can get those, and it's always fun to share, and it's always great for conversation. And if you got 300 bottles in your bar, you don't need them all open, but you should be on that. You should be on that action of trying to
on the journey.
End goal.
Your end goal is to open those whiskeys, right? All right. So this is the Wild Turkey 101 12-year export. This is available in, let me see if I get this right. This is available in Japan, Korea, and Australia.
That's right.
And that's it. And if you're not one of those places,
it was originally South Korea got it first. Yeah.
I don't think they're shipping any to North Korea.
No, might make them a little easier to get along with.
But anyway, so the fact that we've got a bottle and you've got a bottle means that there's some gracious folks in the world that have made sure some bottles have made it back this direction so that we can share it.
Absolutely. And the guy that helped me get mine knows who he is.
Yeah.
Knows I appreciate it.
So if if you're traveling to Japan or Korea or Australia, just remember Jim, Brian, and Bo.
Exactly.
We'd be happy to reimburse you for your expenses.
No doubt.
Wouldn't we? But this is 12 years. It's a 101. It's something that has received great acclaim this year, certainly by the people who know Wild Turkey. And I think we should enjoy it. Cheers, fellas.
Sir. Cheers.
Wow. That's de facto turkey right there.
That's just so good.
Did you get to share a little bit with Jimmy?
Of this one?
Yeah.
No.
I'm just wondering what his opinion on it would be.
I think this would be in Jimmy's wheelhouse. I think based on what he's told me he likes and what I've seen that he does like.
Yeah.
I think he'd say, that's pretty good work.
Well, we had David Rare Bird on the show, and we sipped on this one, and I think, if I remember correctly, he said this had a fair chance of being his bourbon of the year 2022.
Yep. No argument from me on that.
I'm going to be sad to see it go, but I am so damn glad I opened it. And I've got to share it with quite a few people already.
I've not heard anybody who had a chance to taste that bottle not have like that, wow. That's been, everybody I've talked to that's tried has been like, holy cow. There's been nobody it was pretty good. It's usually way more than that.
Now, I don't know that you have the details on this particular batch, but when it says 12 year, that means the youngest whiskey in it is 12.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean that there aren't older whiskeys in it.
Right.
Do you know anything more than we know?
I don't.
Okay. Well, I just thought I'd ask.
Let's know how hard it is to get. That's one that I don't have a lot of info on because, I didn't think I was ever going to see it, because I'm in Kentucky. That one wasn't one that I knew a whole lot about.
So, Bo, what do you do for fun? What do you do when you're not working at Wild Turkey? What's your leisure time look like?
Honestly, I spend a lot of time reading and studying like a lot of bourbon history.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things I love to do. Especially regarding Lawrenceburg and Anderson County.
Yeah.
I love to try to find out, what was happening back then, how it all went down.
So do you collect things from that period? Or are you just an information gatherer? Do you like stories? Do you write anything down?
I do write a lot of stuff down. I got notebooks full of stuff. Like when I find something I really, oh wow, that's cool info. Not so much collect stuff. I'm more, like you said, information gathering and sharing that information. See, that gives me a lot of pleasure to share the information there of that property and the surrounding properties with people when they come in. Because one thing I've noticed about people who visit the Bourbon Trail now, they're a lot more knowledgeable about the process of making bourbon than they've ever been. So when I start getting questions regarding the pH level, what works best for our yeast and stuff like that, I'm like, all right, well, you're not going to be interested in my jokes right now, are you? But you get those questions now. So for me, those folks now, they want to know the history behind that bourbon.
Sure.
And we've got 2 legends right there on property.
Absolutely.
So they want to know their history as well. And I am blessed to say that both those guys are friends and are willing to share their story with me so I can share it with other people. And I don't have to say, well, somebody told me Jimmy Russell did this. We're like, Jimmy Russell told me that he did this.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Now, I heard Jimmy was quite the football player back in the day.
There was a guy came in the other day, just like last week. He was looking for Jimmy. It just so happened it wasn't the day Jimmy was in there. Went to high school with him. And I made some kind of remark similar to that. I was like, yeah, Jimmy's a pretty good athlete when you guys were in school. And this guy was like, he might have been the best athlete in the state of Kentucky.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, really? Holy cow. Yeah. And Jimmy was sitting with him at one point. He held a whole lot of records in Anderson County. A lot of them were his athletic records.
Yeah.
And we were sitting there talking. He's talking about he still had the record for the 100-yard dash and from Anderson County High School. I was like, still to this day? He goes, still my record. And Eddie was like, you know why, don't you? I said, no. He said, they changed it to the 100-meter. I was like, that's beautiful. But Jimmy can honestly tell that story, and it's for real. But Eddie's like, you know why he still owns it, don't you?
that is so funny.
Is there anything that, and I'm sure this list would be very long, but is there anything that's really just surprised you digging through all that history that has just been kind of mind blowing to the point of who would have thought?
Couple things. One is the amount of bourbon that was being made within just a couple of miles of where Wild Turkey sits today. I was like, when I started digging and found out there was a distillery right here, there's one right here, and they're all like within 5 miles of each other at that point in time.
Yeah.
Pre-Prohibition. And the fact that Cliff Springs, which is the one that T.B. Rippey owned, right there where that rock quarry sits now is where that one was sitting. That was the biggest distillery in the country before Prohibition.
Oh, wow.
And it sat right there in Tyrone. So, yeah, those kind of things. And another one that is just so intrigued me on so many levels, and all credit goes to Eddie Russell for turning me onto this story, was the story of Mary Dowling and how she kind of outsmarted Prohibition on her own. I thought that was pretty impressive myself.
She's the one that went to Mexico with her stocks, right?
She sure did.
Yeah.
She got arrested for bootlegging down there on Main Street during Prohibition. A couple of the guys that were running booze for her squealed on her, so they come busted her. And she's like, well, I'll just move it to Mexico and keep moving it. So those kind of stories are so cool to me to hear that.
That whole area, Lawrenceburg and Tyrone, right? Mm-hmm. And then across the highway there in Frankfort, that whole area there, just at Glens Creek, right? All the way down Glens Creek. I mean, they were just producing such huge amounts of whiskey there back in the day. I think I watched that documentary called Neat. And they said that at that point in time, I think it was the 1890s, in that area, they were producing all the whiskey because the average 15-year-old in the United States was consuming 18 gallons of whiskey a year.
Wow.
Now, they say average 15-year-old because I think back in those days, if you were 15, you were working like a man, right?
Oh, even younger. Yeah.
Even younger.
I think my dad said he had to go to work when he was like 13.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were working with the men and you were drinking with the men at that time. Mm-hmm. And the average 15-year-old adult male was consuming 18 gallons of whiskey a year. Now, I'm not sure what I'm drinking, but I don't think it's 18 gallons. I mean, that would be...
I feel confident it's probably not.
It's definitely not. But
I hope not anyway.
But if you walk into one of the older distilleries, and I'm just going to use the Castle and the old Taylor distillery there. If you walk in there and you see the old boilers, you're just like, oh my goodness.
Mhm.
And the amount of barrels that were being put out there. I think about the fact that a lot of those distilleries are doing 600 to 800 barrels a day.
Mhm.
And if you look at the behemoth in Wild Turkey, how many barrels a day are they doing out of Wild Turkey?
On average, about 560 a day.
So we've got distilleries in the late 1800s that were matching Wild Turkey's production.
Mhm.
And there were many of those.
Jimmy said when he got to that distillery, he was 19 when he started there.
Yeah.
He said when he got there, they were doing 56 to 60 barrels a day at Anderson County when he got there. So that's about what they were filling up. Now it's 560 on average.
Yeah.
And one of the guys that works in the cistern room told me that they've got the capability of 600, but you really got to push it to make that happen.
Yeah.
That's what he was telling me.
Wow. Just amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
It's really cool. And another thing too that I've noticed or learned about why they were all in that spot. Like if you started floating, let's say you got on the river at Nicholasville, like we were talking about up there where the Curly Distillery and all those were. If you started floating, you'd float by Wild Turkey.
Yep.
You would have floated by Cliff Springs. You'd have floated by Clover Bottom. Keep on floating, you're going to float by Buffalo Trace.
Yep.
The Kentucky River. And I was studying this, and I hate to say that being born and raised in Kentucky, I didn't know this until a few months ago, but Kentucky has more navigable waterways than any state in the continental United States.
Really?
Right.
I didn't know that.
Now, I just told you how many are sitting on the Kentucky River, right?
Mhm.
Okay. The Kentucky River flows north. One of the few rivers in the world that does that. Hooks up with the Ohio and takes off down south. Then it's going to hook up with the Mississippi. Basically, what I'm saying is if you walk over across from Wild Turkey with a raft and jumped on the Kentucky River and started floating, you'd eventually dump out into the Gulf of Mexico. They could get that to Louisiana off that Kentucky River really easy and really quick compared to what, there were no trucks and all that stuff back at that point in time, no highways and interstates. That was the fastest way to get it to Louisiana.
And Louisiana or New Orleans was known for bourbon.
They were the biggest buyer in the country at that point in time.
Because that was a port of shipping it out to the world, right? So everybody knew that New Orleans bourbon, right? But it was really Kentucky bourbon that was coming down.
There's still a Bourbon Street down there for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually what they were doing was they were taking it down on flatboats. So a lot of those old places in New Orleans were being built with the wood that came from the flatboats. They'd sell those by a horse and come back.
So let me ask you this. If you get outside of the river there, you go down Glens Creek. Now, Glens Creek is another tributary into the Kentucky River.
Yep. Know exactly where that's at.
How did they get the whiskey from Glens Creek, which would be LeBrot and Graham Distillery and the Old Crow Distillery and the other distilleries? How did they get that to the Kentucky River?
I'm going to have to figure that one out too.
You haven't done it yet.
No, I've got that far yet.
Now, Colonel Taylor had a rail yard, right?
Brought it right into the distillery. Yeah.
Yeah. But the other folks, they weren't putting it on Glens Creek because that's just
no, it wouldn't have taken you where you wanted to go.
Babbling brook, right? Yeah.
Right. And the fact that how much bourbon was coming out of Old Crow at that point in time, there was a lot of whiskey coming out of there. Was that, I don't know, was that later on that they became such a prominent and big distillery? That's some more. See, that's what's cool is because there's always something else for me to dig in on.
Yeah. Well, David Jennings has done a good job of the Wild Turkey history, right?
You ain't kidding.
Man, I mean, he's really done a good job of that. From Rippey to Russell, I think is the story there, right? And but there's a lot more. There's a lot more of Lawrenceburg and Frankfurt distilling history that hasn't been told yet.
Yeah, all those. I think it's cool. I'll point out to people, like if they go down Main Street and turn left, you're going to go by all those old mansions that were built by all those distillers. And Jimmy said they were all like, well, you build that house that big, I'll build one bigger. And that was kind of what was going on. You've got like you and I were talking earlier about the WB Saffel. Saffel home still sits there just like it looked on the label of that bottle back then. Right beside of it, which is now the Gash Funeral Home, was where I think it was the Lillards. Yeah, the Lillards lived there, from Bond and Lillard.
Yeah.
Mary's was John Dowling. They lived in the big white one on the left. That's where she actually got popped, was right there on the left side of the street.
Wow. Yeah, I know Mike and I had the great honor of speaking at the Rippy House one night, and that's just an amazing place too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that one. You still got that one too. And there was a lady came in a couple weeks ago. This is another great thing about it. When we get the locals in there, some of those folks have been around for a while, and they'll tell you stories about what was going on back then in that point in time. And she was telling me that the caves, that everybody talks about, the legendary Saffel caves that are supposed to exist. She said they did because when she was a kid, she played down in that basement where it's all bricked up now, where you would go into those caves. So she said it did exist.
So somebody needs to figure that out, right?
And Eddie Russell tells me while they were building his house, he was living in the Saffel house for a while. I'm like, how did you leave that part out of this story, dude? That's fantastic.
That is so awesome. Well, we have one more whiskey on our list tonight, and we've got it in the glass. So let's check it out. And this is our last glass of the night, guys.
Good way to finish.
I walked in there and they had a number of bottles on the shelf. This is at the the Wild Turkey Visitor Center, and I hadn't been around back corner yet to see if Bo was there or not. And I was toying with, should I get the single barrel bourbon or should I get the single barrel rye? No, I want to buy a bottle while I'm here. And I spotted that hat over on the shelf, that leather.
Oh yeah, the old Jimmy hat.
The old Jimmy hat. And I told my wife, I'm going to get that hat. But let's walk back and have a cocktail, or let's go back and have a pour. And we did. I think I came back there and you said something about the rye. The rye is extra special, I think.
Yeah, hard to find.
Yeah.
Number one, hard to find. And I've never had anybody not take a sip of that rye and go, holy cow, this is really good.
So you basically pointed, you suggested the rye, and I tried it, and I think my mind was made up before I tasted it. When I had the nose, I think my mind was already made up. And this is our fourth pour of the night, and I have to say that Wild Turkey is not necessarily super well known for its ryes, but they've had some ryes that are exceptional.
Probably most well known for the Cornerstone, and more recently the Rare Breed Rye.
Yeah.
Well, that Rare Breed Rye, I think it was like a top 5 whiskey of the year when it came out.
Yeah. And this is the Russell's single barrel rye.
Yep.
This is a 2022 vintage. 2022.
Well, this was bottled this year. The one you bought was.
Oh, this is a 23 vintage.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're 22. You're right.
22 vintage. Okay. This is 20. What's the proof on this?
I keep forgetting we're in 2023.
I know. The changeover takes a while, right?
Of course, then I act like 2020 didn't exist at all.
I'm usually about, Kentucky Derby time, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it's the next year.
Yeah.
So this is a 2022 single barrel rye. It's 104 proof. And it's obviously barreled under the Russell's label, single barrel.
Be somewhere around 7 years when the barrel gets chosen for this.
A 7-year rye is pretty respectable. Ryes tend to age a little bit faster than bourbons. They come to maturation a little bit sooner, right? And I have no clue why that is, but it just happens.
I don't know either, because like we were talking about having Cornerstone, that was some pretty old rye. The ryes that went into the most recent Master's Keep, the Unforgotten.
Yeah.
That was 9 and 11-year-old rye whiskey that went into that. It did not come across harsh. None of those things you think are going to happen happened with that. I think Wild Turkey's mash bill for rye does really well to age a little longer.
Whiskey as an American thing. So our forefathers started on the East Coast, right? They started up in New England, whether it be Plymouth or New York or, Boston or, wherever it is. They started on the East Coast, and it took a while for them to migrate west,
right,
to where the corn was growing.
Yeah. So
until they did, they made all their whiskey out of rye.
Yeah, you got to think a lot of those guys, those families coming over, Scotland, Ireland, they'd been making rye whiskeys. What they'd been doing, it grows better there. Corn didn't grow very well over there.
I think the Indians introduced them to the corn, right?
That's my impression too, is that the corn became, as they started to migrate west, they started to realize that rye does not grow that well in those areas, but corn will. And then, of course, somebody figured out they could still make good liquor with corn. Here we are.
I know if you go to Mount Vernon, George Washington's homestead, that you're going to get rye whiskey there.
Mm-hmm. That's what he was making.
That's right.
He was at one. Did you know he was at one point the biggest distiller in the country?
I heard that right before the Whiskey Rebellion.
George Washington was. And then from what I've read and have learned and come to understand, he only had the one still. And I can't remember. I want to say that the gentleman who was making his whiskey was Irish, or he was managing the farm. I think he was Irish. And he was the one that told George Washington basically like, look, if you turn this into liquor, people will buy a lot of it. And next thing you know, he's like putting new stills in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a lot of I saw something the other day on, social media is the greatest thing, right? You get all this information like flooding into you all day, every day, and you don't know how much of it to believe. But
right.
There was this one post I saw that said after the Continental Congress and what they drank after they signed the Constitution, they had a party, right?
Right.
Or whatever it was. And it was like, I mean, there was only like 60 of them there, but they drank like 120 gallons of stuff. So it's like unreal. There's some serious drinking going on.
I have a feeling that a lot of the foundation of this country was actually came to fruition around alcohol.
Probably so.
When it was those guys up there in the Northeast that were doing it. I got a funny feeling that a lot of those big conversations happened around alcohol.
Well, let's have a conversation around this single barrel rye from Russell's. What do you think? Wow.
Nose is fantastic.
Yeah, it really is a great, great nose on this whiskey. And like I said, I think I had already decided this is the bottle I wanted before I ever tasted it because that nose just captivated me.
Yep.
It does have a little bit of a bite. If you take a big enough whiff, you'll get that little bite at the end, that little sizzle on your nose. But it's got that freshness to it, that sort of that that rye pine freshness that you get.
Yep.
But you can see that there's an underlying like candy grain, kind of a grain.
You don't expect the sweetness you get from it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's really good. I'm going to taste it. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Wow. I don't
think it's as peppery as you expect it to be either.
No,
not at all.
No, but it is flavor packed. I mean, it is just so full of flavor. It's like super concentrated.
Yep. Great mouthfeel.
Yeah. Great mouthfeel. But it's got a wonderful rye sort of freshness and lightness to it.
There's that bright thing that comes from like rye. Yeah. It's there.
But it's got a nice candy sweetness to it. There's a little bit of that rye, sort of like buttered rye bread, kind of rye muffin kind of stuff. But I would say it's more aromatic than it is sort of earthy. Oh,
absolutely. Totally agree with that. Now, what you've got is a recipe there that from a master distiller who's not the biggest rye fan in the world.
Sure.
Jimmy's not a big rye guy as far as that goes. So when people are asking about the recipe, I don't give those out, number one, because I don't want Jimmy to take me out of his will.
So you get the scooter?
Yeah, I want the scooter. That's what I want. No, I'm kidding. Obviously kidding there. But he made a rye whiskey for a bourbon drinker. I make jokes all the time to people. I say it's barely legal.
Yeah. And I would kind of expect that. And I think we kind of already know that. I mean, as a bourbon drinking public, we know the ryes coming out of Wild Turkey are Kentucky ryes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's now called Kentucky rye for a reason.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's extremely tasty. It's one that I think definitely a bourbon, like you said, a bourbon drinker could appreciate this.
It blew me away. I've never been that much of a rye fan. Like I said earlier, my palate has tended through the years to lean more what I eventually learned was Jimmy's palate. But when I tried this, I was like, Holy cow. When Bruce was on here, did he tell you the story about when he first started there about the rye thing and Jimmy not liking rye whiskeys?
I'm sure he probably did. I don't recall, but we had just a few whiskeys that day.
Well, those things happen. So I want to say it was Eddie that actually told me the story. It might have been Bruce, but I think it was Eddie. Bruce had started there, and Bruce loves rye whiskey. Him and all of his friends were drinking ryes, and they were at lunch, and Bruce he had tried, I think he said it was the Russell 6-year rye that he had tried and just loved it. And I guess him and Eddie and Jimmy were at lunch, and Bruce looked across the table and said, Mimi, I think that 6-year Russell's rye might be some of the best stuff you're making right now. And he said, Jimmy looked across the table and went, "You're fired." I thought that was awesome. Eddie, it was Eddie, because Eddie said later, told him not to worry about it. He's fired me 8 times.
Well, Jimmy definitely knows what he likes. His palate is even at his age, his palate is unsurpassable, right? I mean, he knows. I've heard stories about how you can taste a honey and tell you what county it comes out of, or how he'll taste a tea and he'll know which leaves are in it, all that kind of stuff. He's just got a great palate.
I know he did was it a bourbon ball or a brownie or some kind of candy or something that was, a lady brought it in and told him that she did it with 101. He tasted it. He said, "That's good, but that ain't 101. That's Jim Beam."
Well, you got to be good to do that.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
I'd agree that, if, Bo, like you said, if you're a bourbon guy or gal and you don't really like rye, you should give this a shot.
Absolutely.
I think you'll be very, very pleased with what you do there.
And I've been telling people that when they come to the bar, like on the days I'm running the bar back there, and I'll be like, "Do you like rye at all?" Well, I'm kind of getting into my ryes, because it is growing. The love for rye whiskey is growing every day. If you like rye at all, let me turn you on to this one right here, because it is harder to locate. We don't do as much of that particular rye, because like Rare Breed rye took top 5 whiskey of the year. So you're going to make a lot more of that one.
Sure.
Right.
So it's the way that works out. I know when I found out that the delivery truck had a delivery of single barrel rye on it, one of the other guys there, Tyler, the other guy that works with me there, we were like ready to dance together. Like, oh my gosh, they finally got it again.
Well, I'm half tempted to go get another bottle. I really am, because
it's good.
It's darn fine. So listeners, if you're hearing this, and I can pretty much guarantee them that this is going to be on the shelf when this show pops here in a couple of days, right? They're going to have it on the shelf?
Yes, as far as I know.
Okay.
We are.
If you can make your way to the Wild Turkey Distillery Visitor Center, chances are very, very good that you can get your hands on a single barrel rye.
Mm.
And it's, I'd say, exceptional.
I agree.
Well above others that I've had anytime recently. Really good.
I absolutely agree. And I'm kind of in that window, like with Eddie Russell, that it's supposed to be non-chill filtered.
Yeah.
That's the way they originally made it, and they made it that way for a reason when you taste it. So,
and what's a bottle going to cost somebody at the shop there?
I want to say that one is right around the $60 window.
I think you're right.
I think that's what it was.
I think you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't get any discount that day. You charged me full price.
Well, I was at the bar.
All right. Yeah, I have to say that, if you're experienced with rye whiskeys as a 95.5 Indiana rye, I love them. Personally, I like them a lot, but they're more candy sweet. They don't have this sort of rye toast kind of full-bodied effect that this rye has. This has still got that little bit of candy sweetness to it.
Yes, it does.
But it's very aromatic, and it's also got that kind of rye muffin, a little bit of rye muffin. So you get a little bit more of the grain, I think, in this, which is nice.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, big fan. Well, Bo, I know you brought one of your instruments with you today, and it's one that is pretty familiar from across the room. We've seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about this little guitar you brought?
So I started calling this thing, it's a box guitar, but it's not a cigar box guitar. It is as you can see, a Russell's 2003 box that was turned into a guitar for me. If anybody is interested, if you're on Instagram, if you go to Mike's Bourbon and Guitars on Instagram, you'll see his work. So he brings this in as an unbelievable gift to me one day. And I started playing around with it, and it's fun. Now, most people, we talked about this a little earlier, most people will look at this thing and think, cigar box guitar, you're supposed to play that with a slide. I'm from the hills of Eastern Kentucky. I'm a real hillbilly, so the first thing I thought of was a banjo. So I don't use a slide on it, but it's fantastic. It's awesome. Jimmy signed it too. Jimmy happened to be there that day, and I've got a really cool picture of Jimmy holding it like he's actually playing it and being a rock star. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to see that picture. So Russell's 2003.
Mm-hmm. They said they drank the bottle just so they could have the box to make the guitar with. So those are my kind of people right there.
They didn't share any of that 2003 with you?
No, they just brought me the guitar.
But you've had the 2003
I have.
before.
It's good.
And yeah, it's a pretty fine whiskey.
It is.
It's one that you won't forget in your lifetime when you've had it. Much like this 2022 export, it's kind of exceptional. Every now and then we get one of those, right?
Yeah, you got to know somebody, but yeah.
Or this rye.
That, I know the people who make that. You can get that one.
You can get that one.
Yeah.
So on the single barrel ryes, do you think that this is more of an exception to the rule, or are they pretty good all the time?
They're always good.
They're always good. Is this one exceptionally good?
I don't know, because they had been gone for so long until we got this delivery in. I think we had like an 18-month. Was it? Yeah, it was like an 18-month window of being without it before we could get it again.
Yeah. It's got just a little bit of juicy fruit gum in it, man. I mean, wow. Just amazing.
It's for real.
All right. I tell you what, I'm so excited, Bo. I mean, you rocked the stage for so many years with Montgomery Gentry, and you know, you've brought this wonderful gobble. You call it your gobble box.
I call it a gobble box because I couldn't think of anything else to call it. So
signed by Jimmy Russell.
It is.
You got it plugged in. I'd love to hear you do a little riff on it.
Sure.
Oh yeah, that was pretty awesome. So, do you ever slap on the box at all? Or is it,
I've tried it. I'm not that guy.
you're not that guy?
I'm so concentrated on the strings that it's just like, yeah, if I start doing that, I'm gonna screw that up. But I have thought about that and done it before.
Yeah,
tried to do it before.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what you can do with 3 strings. So how difficult is
It's
it?
3 less I have to worry about.
3 less. So how hard is it to make that transition from 6 to 3?
It's tough because there's a tuning change that goes on there to do 3 strings versus the 6. You really need to remember where that top string is tuned to, or otherwise you're going to go for one thing and get something totally different out of it.
Now, the strings farther apart, or?
They are.
Yeah.
Much farther apart. I play a Strat a lot now.
Yeah.
Most of my life on the road, I played a Firebird, Gibson. Gibson necks are a little wider than a Fender neck, plus they're thicker. So those Fender necks, man, I love them because they're small. They're easy to wrap your fingers around. This is kind of like a Fender neck with that Gibson spacing. So it's kind of like, oh, wow, that didn't confuse me at all.
Yeah. So Firebird, that has something to do with your like Instagram handle a little bit, right?
It does.
Firebird Bo.
Yeah. Yeah. When we started out as MG, we were all huge Southern rock fans. Leonard Skinner was our band, man. That was what we wanted to be. It was like we wanted to be like Leonard Skinner. The guy who played with Leonard Skinner that was my personal hero, his name was Alan Collins. He always played an old Firebird. And I wanted to play a Firebird. You know, and of course you had people like Johnny Winter who played a Firebird, another legendary hero to me.
Sure.
And I wanted to play an old Firebird. And once I did, I just kind of stuck with it. And nobody in country music was playing a Firebird. That was rock and roll. Oh, that's the devil's guitar. But I was like, I really don't care. That's what I love. So that's what I'm playing. And it kind of stuck with me is that I kind of, you know, people expected to see me playing that guitar. And when I play something different, they would be like, where's the Firebird? That really started happening, you know. And my favorite experience with the Firebird guitar was that we were playing the Grand Ole Opry during CMA Fest. And I'm standing on the side of the stage getting ready to go out for our thing, you know. And in my left ear, over my shoulder, I hear this voice. And the voice sounded exactly like this. It was like, that's a mighty nice sax you're playing now, my brother. I turned around, it's freaking Billy Gibbons.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was like, holy cow, dude. And so, you know, it just kind of became a thing. We did shows with them later on. And, you know, they had that song, The Bird is the Word.
Yeah. So for those who don't know who Billy Gibbons is.
ZZ Top.
Yeah, ZZ Top.
Yeah. Saw him backstage. They were on a golf cart going by the back of the stage one time. And I just looked over and kind of waved. He goes, the bird's the word, man. I was like, dang, that's cool.
Yeah. So you lead guitarists. You guys you're kind of like this elite club of guitar players out there who've rocked the stage around the world. And so is there a bit of camaraderie when you see each other out
among guitarists?
Yeah.
Many times, yes. But you have, like anything else, you have certain guitar players who look at it as competition, like I'm better than you, or I can play faster than you, or this thing or that thing or whatever. But for the most part, we're all kind of like, hey man, I like what you're doing. That's cool. You know, best example I could possibly give you that. It's like, I feel like I'm being a name dropper here, but you know,
that's all right.
I had the opportunity to meet a lot of folks.
Sure.
So we went on this thing at Brooks and Dunn tour, and it was called the Neon Circus Tour, which was basically like boys' night out every weekend. It was us, Toby Keith Urban, and Brooks and Dunn. It was a pretty good show. And we had just gotten started. I was a big Keith Urban fan because I had heard him with a band called The Ranch. So I knew what this cat could do with a guitar before he ever became famous.
I just saw him like a month ago, and he killed it on stage.
He is fantastic.
Yeah.
So I already knew that before he became a star. And I can't remember what song it was that he had out at that point in time that was a big hit. He was starting to really shoot up the ladder. And I loved it. So I'm playing that riff. We're getting ready to do our sound check. And I'm at my amp and I'm playing that riff from his big song he had out. I turn around and there he stood with his arms crossed looking at me. And I'm like, oh crap, what do I do here? So I just looked at him and said, just get used to it. I'm stealing every riff you've got while we're out here. And he came to me later out of catering and he threw me one of his caps, with one of his baseball caps. He said, if you're going to steal my riffs, you might as well wear my merchandise.
There you go. There you go.
And we're still to this day, if I see him, he will call me by name. He will hug me. We did the Opry with him one night. My wife is a huge Keith Urban fan, and she was like, "God, you guys are not really friends." I'm like, I'm telling you, we're buddies. And he came in the dressing room to see me, and I put him on the phone with my wife. I said, would you do me a favor? Would you speak to my wife and let her know that we actually know each other? He said, what's her name? He said, Jeannie. And he did that really ultra cool Australian, hello, Jeannie.
Oh, my gosh. So he's like the greatest showman, right? He is such a great showman.
He's a good human being.
He's a good human being. He really loves to incorporate the audience in his show, and really reaches out and embraces those in the audience who are may have special needs, and and just need a little bit of lifting up. I think it's great.
The dude's like 5 foot tall, but he's got a heart the size of a pickup truck. He's a good man. I will always go to bat for Keith anytime he needs me.
That's awesome.
Not that he'll ever need me with the money he's making, but
yeah. Hey, Keith.
Keith, remember me, buddy?
When you're heading out on that boat, give me a call.
Jim, I'd like to jump back just real quick if you don't mind, and just ask what that experience is at the Grand Ole Opry, because it's the Mecca, like that's it for country music. So what was that feeling the first time that you walked out and you had the opportunity to be there?
Nervous. Very nervous, because I grew up, see, I'm old, I'm telling my age now for sure, but Friday nights, the Grand Ole Opry was what my dad would put on the radio. I grew up with the Grand Ole Opry. So in my mind, the Grand Ole Opry was like this pinnacle of success that as a musician that you needed. If you reached the Opry, you really had made it, So that first time to walk out there and you see that circle, it's like Hank Sr. stood there. That's the kind of thing you start thinking. It's like, holy cow, this is amazing. I got really nervous because the last thing I wanted to do was screw up Hillbilly Shoes on the Grand Ole Opry. But we wound up playing it multiple times after that.
Yeah.
With so many different artists. Like I said, the whole Billy Gibbons story. And we got to meet some of the guys that we grew up listening to, like little Jimmy Dickens, and you get to know them and they know who you are when you walk in. Little Jimmy he was a character, man. He was awesome. He told us a story one time backstage. He said, I went to the doctor. He said, I couldn't hear nothing out of this ear over here. He said, I went to the doctor, and he said, Doc, I can't hear a thing out of this ear right here. And he said, well, let me look at you, Jimmy, and see what's going on. He said, doctor looked at my ear, and he said, well, I know why you can't hear nothing out of your ear. He said, you've got a suppository stuck back in your ear. Jimmy said, I tell him, thank you, Doc. Now I know what I did with that hearing aid.
So having a hit like Hillbilly Shoes, that kind of put you guys on the map, and what did it feel like during that breakout time? I mean, did it happen all at once? Was it gradual?
I think both. I think it happened all at once, but it felt gradual to us, if that makes any sense whatsoever. We were having a party, man. It's like, holy cow, we're not in a bar. We don't have to fight our way out of this place every night.
People setting your gear up for you?
Not initially.
Not initially, but no. You got there eventually.
Eventually, yeah. Of course, I'd always give Eddie Montgomery a hard time about that. He said, well, got that amp? Yeah, I wish I was a singer, so all I had to do is walk in with a microphone. But it didn't dawn on us. Honestly, I can't say it did. We were still relatively young. And it was truly a busload of guys who were already friends.
Yeah.
We didn't have to get to know each other. We already knew each other. We were already buddies. All of us, the entire band, and Eddie and Troy.
Looking out for each other.
Yeah. If you honestly, you hear it all the time. If you mess with one, you mess with everybody.
Sure.
That was kind of how we were. Not that we got in trouble for anything like that, but it was just a camaraderie that was there. And we just couldn't believe, holy cow, this is awesome.
That's amazing. Great memories.
Yes, sir. More blessed than I ever deserved to be. There's no doubt about that.
Well, we all have seasons to our life. We all have those times we go through where we do one thing and then we move on to something else. And And you've had a couple of great things in your life, including family, right?
Yep, no doubt.
Tell us a little bit about your family life and where you live and what you do. And
living over in Lawrenceburg, about 8 minutes from that distillery.
Yeah.
Got the wife and the dogs, and that's kind of my life now, man, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I told her just the other day, actually, we were sitting there watching TV, and one of the dogs was laying on her on the couch, and the other one was laying across my feet when I'm sitting in my chair. And I said, if you had ever told me that being here with you and these dogs would be the ultimate spot for me to think I wanted to be, I would have never believed you, because it was always New York City, LA, Canada, Australia, wherever,
There's a lot to be said for being content with where you are in your life.
Oh, no doubt. But I will say this about our kids, though. You hear people tell you all the time about that empty nest thing. Oh, love them when they're there, because when they're gone, you're going to miss them. That's a lie.
Yeah.
That's a lie. We're glad they're gone. I'm kidding, kids. We love you. Come back and see us.
I remember a commercial on TV like years ago where the mom and dad were like feigning tears in their eyes because their child, their one and only child, was getting in the car to drive off to college, and they're acting all sad and everything. The kid pulls away. They start high-fiving each other. They go inside and turn his room into a jacuzzi room.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, now I've got my studio room upstairs where I can play music or record video, whatever, which used to be a bedroom.
Yeah. I mean, you love your kids, but you want them to get on with their life, right?
Best thing you can do as a parent is prepare them for what's next.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yep. That doesn't mean always being best friends, but...
Well, Bo, we've had such an amazing time with you tonight. We always do, but it's been great. Brian and I really appreciate you coming out, visiting with us tonight, drinking a little bit of whiskey with us, and sharing some stories, sharing a little bit of music. And we'd love to give you the opportunity to let our listeners know where they can follow you and hear those great stories, those history stories, those pictures, those things that you have going on through social media. And why don't you share for them where they can find you?
Easiest way to find me is through Instagram or Twitter, and it goes back to what you were saying with the Firebird earlier. Just if you at firebirdbo, all one word, that's going to show up.
And Bo is B-O.
B-O. Yeah, I ain't French. It's B-O.
It's not B-A-U or anything like that.
I'm a hillbilly. It's B-O.
And they can always find you.
If the doors are open at Wild Turkey, you can find me there.
You're there. They can find you leading a tour. They can find you pouring cocktails at the bar at the visitor center.
Might be behind the counter, like checking you out at the register, telling stories, whatever. But that is my favorite thing I do right now is talk to people about Wild Turkey and Jimmy and Eddie.
Well, I think we really had a great time today, Bo. We drank some great whiskeys. We had some good conversation, and we always look forward to having you on again. Brian, where can people find us on the internet?
Well, guys, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. We also do a little bit of TikTok here and there.
You can also find us on our private Facebook group, the Bourbon Roadies. We have well over 3,000 members. Just good people, good friends, sharing whiskey, sharing stories, sharing pictures, just having a good time. Bo, I think you're a bourbon roadie. You've been one for quite a long time. Yeah. We love to have conversation with our roadies. We would love to have you become one. If you're thinking, what does it take to become a bourbon roadie? It's really quite simple. You just go onto Facebook and search the Bourbon Roadies. And when it comes up, it'll ask you to join, and you can answer 3 quick questions. We just want to make sure you're 21. You like bourbon, because we want to make sure you're getting into a bourbon group, and that you agree to play nice, because we just don't accept any rudeness in the group. If you're going to chop somebody off at the knees for what they're drinking, if you're going to tell somebody they shouldn't be drinking that 10 High whiskey or that Old Crow whiskey or whatever it is, that Kessler on the bottom shelf, just let them be. Let them drink what they want to drink and enjoy what they're drinking. Just make sure that they're drinking their whiskey and not storing it up in a room somewhere that it's never going to get open.
Amen.
That's right. Jim.
Absolutely. Yeah.
As always, we don't like it when people come on and try to sell their bourbon.
Yeah, we don't allow any of that because you know what? We like to have this group, the Bourbon Roadies, on Facebook. If you come on and try to sell whiskey, they're going to shut us down. So we don't want anything to do with that. You know, just go make a friend at your local liquor store, revisit them, buy some bourbon from them, talk to them when you're there. They'll make sure you get a good bottle every now and then.
I got one last social media question for you.
Yeah.
Are you guys doing those TikTok dances? I'd subscribe just for that.
I mean, I tell you what, if I could dance, I would. Can you dance, Brian?
Well, I would say this, with the right amount of whiskey, maybe.
Yeah.
But it would be the right amount to get me there.
Maybe if you'll come on and dance with that box.
Oh, I got a bad hip and a bad shoulder.
Yeah.
You don't want to see me dance.
Oh, man, but we have such a great time. We definitely want to hear from you, Roadies. Reach out to us. You can reach Brian and I. You can reach Tyler, all at the same email address. It's team@thebourbonroad.com. You send an email to team@thebourbonroad.com, and we'll all three get it. We're very responsive. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got an idea for a show, if you've got an idea for a bottle, if you've got a distillery in your hometown that's really doing it right, that's kicking it, and you want to shine a little light on them, let us know. We'll reach out to them. We'll get them on the show. We'll do an interview. We'll review their whiskey. We'll try to help them any way we can. You can always go to our website, thebourbonroad.com. We've got a store on there. You can buy our swag. You can read our articles. Brian's been writing some articles lately. A lot of great stuff going on. We'd love to have you listen to every single show that comes out every single week. And the way to do that, Brian, what do they have to do?
So you can go to Spotify, YouTube, Apple. You can also go to our website. You can see all those good places that we post. You can hit the subscribe button, and it will notify you every time we have a new podcast coming out.
All right. And until then, folks, we will see you down
The Bourbon Road.